A very warm welcome, everybody. Warm being definitely the optimum word because it's pretty chilly here at Anglesey and the wind is blowing, as you can probably tell from some of our effects mics too. We are right on the coast here. If you've never been to Anglesey, it probably surprises you that you can see the sea at such close quarters, but it provides on a nice day perfect views across to Snowdonia. Sadly, we can't show those for you just at the moment, but there is promise maybe for later on. Thank you for joining us though for this qualifying session for the Maximum Networks VW Racing Cup, incorporating the Goodyear Touring Car Trophy and TCR UK. My name's Johnny Palmer, be joined by Paul O'Neill very shortly, I hope. Now, I lost Paul a few moments ago after he got on his pedal bike to address certain matters down in the paddock, and I haven't seen him since, so I kind of hope that he's not somewhere in the Irish Sea. We will have to wait and see on that. Cars heading out onto track then for this 20-minute qualifying, or rather 15-minute qualifying session. It'll be 20 minutes when we get to the races, and there have been all sorts of different permutations so far this season, with wins for plenty, and we should really point that out. Yes, we have a championship leader in the form of Lewis Kent, who's managed to accumulate 200 points already, but he's not necessarily had it all his own way. Max Hart taking the first win of the year, the man from County Wicklow. Now, he reckons if he looks across the sea on a clear day, he can probably see his house from here, and it's certainly the shortest distance he has to make off the ferry to get to Anglesey. So almost a home race for Max Hart. We'll wait and see in the 101 car, but he took the opening honours at Silverstone at the start of the year. Lewis Kent winning the second race. The only win of the year so far to Darrell Wilson happened at Castle Combe, along with a win for the first time in the year for Bradley Kent. There was a trio of races at Brands Hatch, you'll remember, when Dan Kirby took a victory, along with Lewis Kent a second win, and a second win for his younger brother Bradley. Jack Constable winning for the first time this year at Alton Park, and Lewis Kent the last winner in Cheshire. So I kind of like the fact, Paul O'Neill, that the wins have been spread quite a lot. We're left with Lewis Kent not taking into account drop scores on 200 points, and he therefore has a 52-point lead over Max Hart. You and I were talking earlier on, though, in our social media duties, that there's a little bit of needle between one or two drivers on this grid, which is great.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And we were saying how good it is to, to have that situation. Max Hart, the super fast Northern Irishman, as you can see him just exiting onto the Tom Price straight there. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with a bit of needle, and the two Kent brothers and also Max Hart, you can just feel that tension building. It did bubble up in a couple of races, but then there was some massive respect and some amazing driving by those guys as they were going around the outside of each other around Paddock Bend at Brands Hatch. But like you say, we're 4 minutes in. It's great to see, and the cars are looking great, and there is a lot of mist around. I've just been into the paddock and it was very misty.
Couldn't even see a hand in front of your face, I heard, and that made the bike ride down there pretty tricky. I tell you someone else I'm going to be looking out for after his performances in free practice, Bruce Winfield, 5th in the championship on 124 points. But towards the end of free practice that happened bright and early this morning, he went quickest, then he did it again, and then he did it again, and nobody was able to get quicker than those three really good times. So Bruce Winfield with a bit of catching up to do, car 37. Maybe he's found, that this track is a real special place for him. We'll have to wait and see. But Max Hart, at least initially, setting the pace with a 133.6. He's 4/10 clear of Lewis Kent.
Yeah, that car looking very nervous, rotating in the corners, the slower corners. You can see the rear of the car was sliding around and just getting its nose. Look at that left rear locking, a lot of oversteer. Look at the front wheels as that car turns in. You'll notice that it's having to counter steer into the corners. It turns one way and has to steer out of it. So coming into the hairpin now at the top of the Tom Price straight, the car looks very well balanced, and it's probably a delta in temperature, to be honest, across the front and rear axle, with the rear axle just a bit cooler than the two front tyres on the front axle. So coming to start or coming to finish this lap now, we'll see where that puts him. He's already on the pole by 3.5 seconds. He should go quicker on this lap, which he does actually by, he's 1.5 seconds on the pole now. So getting good temperature in these tyres with 10 minutes to go.
You and I were trying to work through the World Sporting Consulting balance of performance in a sense, or kind of success ballast, and I won't go too far into the complexities because it's a bit boring really, and we're here to see racing cars go round and round. But Max Hart has got 40 kilos for this weekend. Jack Constable, I think as a result of winning a race last time out at Alton, 60 kilos of extra ballast. So Jack at the moment 10th and in the pits. We need him out on the track to pound round a little bit more. So maybe they're working tyre pressures there. Max Hart is working the track currently and taking 2 of the 3 floppies with him.
Yeah, he really is working hard, isn't he? And as you've just pointed out, Bruce Winfield now only a 10th off. These two are like heavyweights. Max Hart dealing a 31.2 in the first sector versus Bruce Winfield, who's a 31.3. So Bruce is just a 10th down now, and these guys are right up for a fight. I'm surprised at Winfield's pace. This Cupra TCR is a DSG gearbox, so more like a road car gearbox. In Bruce Winfield's car, it's known to be a slower car over a lap, but in his hands it doesn't seem to be. Runs a little bit less weight than the TCR cars with the sequential shifts on, which is every other car in the field. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff as we look at the 16-year-old Hugo Cook, who's been a great addition to this championship.
Bruce hasn't got quite as much weight on as Max either. I reckon Bruce's car is 30 kilos better off as he now goes fastest. What was I saying? Some people say I haven't got a clue about motor racing, but I like to watch the free practice sessions because that can give you an indication of how the rest of the weekend will pan out. A 131.8 puts Bruce Winfield 0.6 of a second clear. I just want to make sure that lap is legitimate because I've got 2 timing screens here and they're not necessarily agreeing with another. I know the reason why. So that's definitely a legitimate time for Bruce Winfield, 131.8. And 0.6 is a bit of a big margin. Now, Max will be thinking, well, not necessarily fighting for the championship with Bruce. Need to make sure that I start the first race of the day ahead of my nearest rival in the championship. That's Lewis Kent.
Yeah, definitely. Look at that, just at the back of those curbs on the apex, using every inch of the road. Bradley Kent looking absolutely hooked up. He's going to have to get some laps in now, as we ain't got much time left. So Bradley really struggling for grip. You can see those tyres locking up. That to me says he's still got really cold rear tyres. So that 44 hasn't got a lap in yet. Can't see him on the timing screens. Must have been out late. So hopefully he can get a lap in, but it's going to be at the very, very end of the session where I think he's going to come alive, because that car looks very, very cold on its front and rear tyres. It's yeah, a very interesting one for him.
Also, some of this is going to be about timing, because you can hear the extent of the wind, which has built up, I think, since you and I were filming a few bits and bobs this morning, and it depends where the kind of wind direction and where that's going to be helping you along certain bits of the track and hampering you in others. But yeah, it is interesting that not everybody took to the session early on. Maybe some late changes as far as pressures are concerned. Now out of the corkscrew corner goes Dan Kirby, race winner earlier on this year, and Dan is down in 9th. I would have expected him to be a little bit higher up. 3rd position now. Oh, Danny Crivet in his first season, I think, of motorsport, up to 2nd fastest in his Hyundai i30N. Had a quick chat with Danny this morning, and he was really looking forward to the weekend. On the front row at the moment, so we got Bruce Winfield first, Danny Crivet second, and now Dan Kirby will split them. Jack Constable leaving his time relatively late in the session, but he pops up to 4th as well. So it's Winfield, Kirby, Crivet and Jack Constable.
Wow, I tell you what, if we can find that number 14 of Danny Crivet, I'm telling you now, that Hyundai i30N is just in sector 2 somewhere, and it's looking super fast. There's no reason why he can't be on the pole. He got knocked down to 3rd place, but I'll tell you what, he's looking pretty feisty. This just shows you how long it takes to get these tyres up to temperature, because everybody now is purple and green as we keep an eye on what Jack Depper's doing down in 9th.
I'm concerned about Lewis Kent's speed here. Is that just to do with the extra 40 kilos he's got for company this weekend? Brad's only 6th, his younger brother, the Kent brothers from Essex. I haven't quite worked that out yet, but it is true. 5 minutes to go, and they would have hoped to be much further up the order. Yes, there's still a third of the session still to go, as Crivet has gone faster again, 131.971 with an absolute best through the second sector. So that means he leapfrogs Dan Kirby to second place.
Absolutely, everybody going purple and green. It'd be interesting to see where Danny Crivet in the number 14 ends up on this first sector. If it's faster, he could nick the pole. He's only a tenth off Winfield at the minute. Dan Kirby looking super fast. Dan Kirby on a 31.271 finishes the lap only 4/10 off. But yeah, there's a lot going on. But as we keep looking at Bradley Kent down in 6th, he's on a faster first sector, as we see Butler going up to 8th.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on these tyres, and it just seems to be right in the window now.
2 in the pits, the pole sitter potentially, and Lewis Kent, and I think they've called it as that's it for the session. Somebody else gaining position there was Hart, so Max Hart's up to 4th place and a potential second row start. But this is really shaking up the order that we've become used to in the championship. And Lewis Kent, if he is going to take no further part in the session, looking at a 5th row start, which is not what he would have been looking at for the first race of this weekend.
Yeah, so like you say, Max Hart up to 4th. That's critical for Max. He needs to get the big points in. Was that your wallet you just dropped on the floor? If you heard that big bang, people need to stop shutting the door so loud.
Look at all the moths coming out of it.
It's not my wallet, mate. Wouldn't get out the door.
By the way, 91 thousandths of a second is what Bruce Winfield is resting on here as he watches. He's back out again, interestingly. I thought he was going to sit out for the rest of the session, but no. And another very good second sector time, which takes the best part of a minute in one of these cars for Danny Crivet, but he couldn't do similar performance in the first sector. So his best time is still a 31.971, but it is less than a tenth of a second away from Bruce Winfield. So I think a pole position is definitely within Danny Crivet's grasp. It's just he's got 2 minutes and 40 seconds to find it.
I'll tell you who might be on here. Hugo Cook in the Audi RS3, the yellow and black car. He's done a great time, and that's Max Hart on the pole. Nicely pointed out.
Up 3 places, Max Hart in the Hyundai. We talked about him being relatively heavy this weekend, but he has found a 131.605, and that is 0.275 of a second quicker than Bruce Winfield. There's still time left on the clock for potentially Winfield, Crivet, Kirby to offer a response, but the time is slipping through their fingers as we focus on the Vauxhall heading down the hill of Alex Kite, the Maximum Motorsport prepared car for Alex. Still trying to build some points from, he's not, I don't think, raced the whole season so far, and getting more and more used to these cars and, of course, these circuits, because this is the first time this championship's visited this track, we should point out. Sorry,
just to cut across, I was very concerned about that time that Hart did. It's been deleted. TSL or somebody it was an outlap in the first sector, and they've put together his outlap with his second sector. So Bruce Winfield goes back on pole, Danny Crivet second, Dan Kirby third, Hart drops all the way back down to 4th. So a bit of an error on the timing screen. Sorry about that.
And you were spot on to cut across me there, because that's big news. It was big news that he potentially got pole, and then he'd had it taken away from him. So still we're on course for Bruce Winfield. His smile can return. Heading out of that's the second bit of rocket. Quite a bit of dirt's being brought on from the inside of that curb now. You can use the curb. Oh, a bit of a lock-up for Bradley Kent there from the front left, by the way. Hart up to second place now. So Max Hart goes second. The margin is only 76 thousandths of a second, but again, the outlap is labelled there for the first sector, which is dubious, Paul.
Very dubious, yeah. I would hang fire on that P2 from Hart, because your sector 1 does not include the outlap. So I don't know whether we're getting a bit of a problem here from a spike on the timing screens, but let's just see if that gets rectified. But at the minute, it's Winfield on pole, which is fully deserved. The only person I can see going faster in the first sector is actually Butler.
Rear left wheel entirely off the ground for the i30N as it turns left and then right through Rocket. Next corner is Peel, and moving up a position there, Hugo Cook into 5th place, so he'll jump ahead of Jack Constable, putting Cook potentially on course for his best start of the season. And Max Hart running out of time hustling the car through corkscrew and on the outside as well, taking loads of curb onto Tom Price Straight.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one. Hart absolutely pinned. So I don't know what's going on here with TSL and the timing screens, but we're going to have to see what this lap comes at, 'cause it must be manually timed, because it's saying he's already through the second sector. So let's see what this ends up as Danny Crevet is into the pits.
But on course for a third position start, which he'll be thoroughly chuffed with, I'm sure. Briefly had provisional pole as well. This guy has got provisional pole, the orange and white Cupra of Bruce Winfield. He spent a bit of time in the session in the pits, heading again through that rather grubby section now at Rocket, turning it partially into a rallycross circuit, because so many people have not exactly been shortcutting, they've just been letting their right side wheels a little bit over the curb, which has brought more and more dirt onto it. 131.880 looking to be good enough, but again it is only 76 thousandths of a second faster than Max Hart. So what's that, 3/4 of a tenth of a second separating the front two.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that Max Hart's time probably is a legitimate one. They would have rectified it by now.
You would have thought so.
And I didn't see the outlap in the green sector 2 change when he was actually nowhere near the cut-off point, so they may have got him on a manual timer from the TSL, the timing consultancy people. So we'll see what happens there. Nobody else has moved up. Most people have taken the checkers. There's no one else to come across the line from what I can see that's going to make a big change.
Will Butler, I think, has just gone ahead of Lewis Kent. They've been having a right old squabble between 9th and 10th places, and Kent had leapfrogged Butler, and he's just repaid the favour. So I agree with you, towards the sharp end there's not much changing, but the lower order positions that could be crucial come the race, because bear in mind, Lewis leading the championship, 10th place start he's looking at. If you watch the graphics tower as the checkered flag icon appears at the end of everybody's name, that tells us that they've either been across the line to see the checkered flag or pitted before they get a chance to do so. And Bruce Winfield, not in the pits, is he? And he hasn't yet crossed the line, but I'm getting the sense from his first sector time that he may have already backed off. I find this session so refreshing to see lots of names that you didn't necessarily think would be strong this weekend locking out the front 2 rows.
Yeah, unbelievable. That is the 2 stories there. Winfield on the pole, unbelievable lap for the Area Motorsport squad, and he's already been on the front row at Brands Hatch, to be fair to it. That car makes rocket ship starts with the DSG gearbox for some reason. And then Danny Crevet, I mean, that is nearly a pole. Unbelievable for him.
Free practice time for Bruce was a 131.839, but I think the conditions have changed since then. It wasn't as windy and there probably wasn't as much moisture on the track, but he managed 10 laps in that session, which was 15 minutes, and clearly staying out for as long as you could, get quicker and quicker, and more track experience has paid dividends for Bruce Winfield, who gets a pole, a 131.880 by 76 thousandths of a second from the man second in the championship, Max Hart. Danny Crevet, surely his best qualifying of the year, starting third alongside race winner earlier on in the season, Dan Kirby. Hugo Cook, 5th place alongside Jack Constable, also a race winner last time out at Alton Park. Bradley Kent 7th, Alex Kite in 8th, ahead of Will Butler and Lewis Kent, the championship leader, on row 5, and Jack Depper will complete the order. But if that is an indication of how things will pan out later on in the races, I cannot wait, Paul O'Neill.
Yeah, should be absolutely spot on. Just a quick one as well, guys, watching the live stream. We'll have some interviews on our social channels, and that'll be with regards to the qualifiers, because there's some great stories there. So make sure you tune into our social channels, and I think we'll be back a bit later on, won't we, for some racing?
We will, yes. The first Goodyear Touring Car Trophy race being after the lunch break, 1:45 from memory, but we are, bear in mind, running a little bit behind time, so check all the latest information on our socials for that. But join Paul O'Neill and myself, Johnny Palmer, for racing a little later on today. Bye-bye for now.